good?
in the handwriting. I was
Okay.
while I was
think
getting my oil changed.
I think I got everything addressed.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
There's one. That's growth. Coverage. No, got that. Nope. We're good.
Okay.
Got everything.
All right.
It's all reflected in the most updated draft. You're good. I just sent it out before the end of the day today, so we're on 5 o'clock.
No, me either. Okay.
Yeah. Would everyone like copies?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have,
Robin, you're good?
I good. I
Ron,
have,
you have the updated one with the red text?
yeah, I have notes on it too.
Ron, you too?
No, I need one.
You need
'cause-
one?
Yeah, cause
I
it's
didn't
the
catch
oval.
it.
And you didn't catch it. All right, so 4 copies coming
Alright,
out.
so we'll wait to
Do you
start.
want me to get it, Jordan?
Did you start already?
No, we'll wait. It's okay, we can wait, even though it's streaming.
That's fine.
It's okay. Hi, everybody. Give us a minute. Yeah, it's okay. Hi. Did I work?
How are things with you?
Yeah.
Huh?
already
How are
waited
things
to-
with you?
for-
Not bad, not bad.
I stopped
Why
it during the
complain?
weekend. Gave him a couple ideas. I got a couple others, but. Too bad. No, we're not yet. Maybe 70. I'm only at 20 pounds a week. Getting there though. Slowly. Maybe a little less actually. I try, trust me. Yeah.
I got locked in.
Alright.
Be right back.
So we're streaming right now? They're off, yeah. That's fine.
Turn them off?
Sonia? I'd like to call this meeting of the Southbury Planning Commission to order, Thursday, June the 5th, 2005, special meeting, room 205. Would everyone join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Let's see, seeing of alternates. We don't have to, we're all here. All right, IBM site, industrial/commercial draft regulation discussion. All right. So I'll let Jordan take the ball in a minute, but I guess the ultimate goal of this is everybody kind of read through this. This is a proposal for then creating a new industrial zone for that piece of property, that parcel. And I think everybody kind of went through this and sent a lot of the changes and discussions to Jordan. And now that we got the new updated copy here, we can, take it through. You want to take us from the beginning? How do you want to do this?
We can
From the
start from the
first
beginning.
paragraph?
We can start with,
You tell. Which is easier for you for note-taking and everything else?
well, regarding changes, why don't we just individually hit each commissioner, but we can just broadly talk about the goals, intent of this, and how I've structured these regulations to look, and how you should be reviewing these for completion.
Okay.
Ultimately, sections highlighted in green, those indicate anything of an inclusion that would accommodate an industrial park-style use at that site. Sections highlighted in blue include an option for multi-tenant office space regulations at that site. The rest of the zone regulations are pretty comprehensive to standard industrial zone regulations. I've reviewed, dozens of industrial zone regulations in the state and abroad, and have devised a version that suits Southbury and accommodates that site in a manner that is no more intrusive or obvious than what is currently accommodated by the IBM site on that property. So if, with that being said, we can just hit each individual commissioner, what they feel is good, bad, indifferent changes,
Okay.
everything, and we can just go individually on each one of the items.
All right. Nancy, you want to go first? Or want me to?
Sure, only I gave them to you.
Yeah, I can speak to Nancy's comments
Okay.
briefly, because a lot of them are indicated in the red text changes. Under permitted uses, Nancy had the suggestion to include that the traffic impact analysis and environmental impact analysis on page 1, under permitted uses, should have an inclusion of at the applicant's expense, which
Yep.
I agree with.
Yep, absolutely.
There were Serial Park, I changed as if we are looking at, and we'll jump to the 80,000 versus 100,000 regarding industrial, for each accommodated industrial use in an industrial park style, that roughly gets you to about 15 acres. With that being said, page 11, and it continues on with that bulk requirements, 90,000, so the minimum requirement on to page 2, just to keep everything concise in how we're moving through this. So that's the last thing I'm willing to open the discussion to that at this point, and I apologize, thank you, Bob. It's page 3, Ron, item number 6. Agree with that sentiment. I always had the note possibly remove on that property and provide a productive tax income to the town use that has much more beneficial tax breaks.
Really need to have that?
Okay, I'm happy to discuss, and we should be having a frank discussion between the commission in devising multi-tenant office space. We're looking at a Union Carbide. We're looking at pretty much hover around 5 to 7,500 square feet of office site. With that being said, at 5,000 square feet per office space and and the turnover is going to be pretty intense, not to mention the retrofitting of that current space is going to be that we're looking for at that site, and we could have more challenges in logistics. So the idea that the Northeast is holding on to these corporate office headquarters really isn't the case anymore. Everything know that site is particularly suited for. It's for that reason that I personally don't believe building, and you have to meet things like building code and fire code, more fire code, but fire corridors, and it's not impossible, but the retrofitting and the plan included in the regulation. regulations.
I totally agree.
I agree with that. I feel that it should be removed.
Yep, I agree.
Cases of this, it doesn't look like any of these developments are having an easy anchor tenants to fill the space, great, but there's no real market.
To only have that person pull out in a year or 2 years, and then you're right back to where you started.
Precisely.
If I was the developer and buying this, I would never want that, because that would be a constant headache for me.
Yep.
Yep.
Not to
And I have
mention
pay
you,
that bill when the person leaves, right?
and you
So
spent
I
a
re-rent
lot of
it.
money retrofitting it.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
money retrofitting it.
So I would think it,
You can take out the blue.
yeah, go buy the blue, yeah. Okay.
Fantastic. We're all in
Okay.
agreement on the removal of the multi-tenant office space.
Do we have to vote on this?
I don't.
No, I don't think so, right?
I don't think
Okay.
so.
No.
Blue it is, gone,
No, but
not altogether, period, right?
number 5. Oh, on page, singularly occupy that space in the manner that it's currently, if our regulations provide for it, that's the perfect thing.
Do that?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion that
Yep.
could be around that if we are needing to market in that direction. It's my personal feeling that this alone is a huge marketing tool for that site. Currently, if you go on LoopNet or any other commercial marketing brokerage, it's marketed as R60C, because that's what it is.
Right.
So CBRE, Cushman and Wakefield, whoever has this as their
Listing.
listing, thank you, we'll have to list it as R60C, and that takes it nowhere.
Right.
So just the changing of this allows so much flexibility for those brokerage groups to then start signaling out to all their Rolodex of individuals that they know could fit on this site.
Roll
And
right down the Greenwich area and sell it right out.
absolutely, absolutely. We'd be
gone
happy
in
to
a
have them.
couple of days. Yep.
All right, wonderful. So if we can move on, I think we're on page 4. Nothing's really changed regarding this language. This has all been pretty standard since kind of the inception.
Everybody was good with 80,000 though, just to make sure?
Yes.
By all means, confirm.
Yes.
Just want to make sure? Everyone's cool with
Yes.
that? Okay,
No
sorry,
problem.
Jordan.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Yep.
explain my reasoning and the calculations that went into changing that number, but
fine with it.
ultimately, an 80,000 square foot occupant. When I did the breakdown of the square footage with this 15 acre requirement, 809 feet, 809 feet as just standard boxes, I was able to, situate right angles on all of it, so obviously, site engineering comes into play. But I was able to fit roughly 5 distinct parcels at 15 acres each, just within the IBM physical footprint. Not the building, but the site footprint. If further modifications, grading, vegetation removal, whatever the case is, ends up needing to be accommodated to fit certain things in certain areas, the commission is able to respond to those aspects of the proposal. But I think with the bulk requirements of the industrial park side of things, it could really work out beneficially. You could get an anchor tenant that wants to take over 100 acres of it and still have some flexible pieces to then accommodate additional uses. What's beneficial about the industrial park side of things is you get synergistic cooperation with a lot of the on-site infrastructure if the particular tenants are willing to be amenable to that. The other thing is it's the environmental impact of those individual developments becomes reduced because of all that sharing of on-site utilities and parking and access ways and loading docks and refuse, whatever the case is. But with that being said, we can just continue moving right along through page 4. These are all the prohibited uses. I'm happy to hear about more, I'm happy to hear about less, but this was the kind of basic version of prohibited uses that I think would accommodate what the commission would not want to see on that site.
I think that's a good list to start with. Anyone want to add to it?
I didn't have anything else.
No, me either.
How did you come up with number 7? There is a particular,
PCBs and hydrocarbons,
Yeah,
they're
are there
a very
others?
pollutant particle that you
Yes.
really want to avoid in any type
I
of
agree.
large-scale development.
I agree with that, but should we expand it or similar and not just limit it to those?
So, you do have environmental protection, design and performance standards in the next section. That,
Yes.
in my opinion, adhering to the compliance of the DEP and all the regulations therein is gonna manage a lot of that. If we want to get more hyper-specific, we absolutely can. I just feel you would have to have a specific intent behind it, because
No, more general, not more specific. so that other toxic,
Some of these things are incidental to specific uses. And with that being said, I'm not even thinking of anything specific. The reason I say this is, we're drafting regulations. You always have to really expand out and consider all the unintended consequences. If you have a business use that wants to occupy 500,000 square feet of structural space, but they, in a clean manner, work with some of the products that you've then prohibited, you've just regulated them out as a prohibited use. So being specific with your language and what you are trying to prohibit and why is crucial, in my opinion.
thank you.
Jordan, I have a question. What if a cannabis-related business wanted to be in that area? I believe that Southbury has a moratorium on.
We prohibited it.
We would
Moratorium's
pro-
over.
We would prohibit, so that
We-
would be prohibited.
We have prohibited it.
Oh, we have,
Cannabis,
okay.
sales and production are prohibited, manufacturing and sales are prohibited in Southbury.
Okay, so what if a cannabis brand or grower or manufacturer
Mm-hmm.
wanted that space, had a good offer for that space?
Just based on the ordinance of the
So-
prohibited nature of cannabis, it wouldn't be able to go through.
Because, just specifically because Southbury has a moratorium?
It's now an ordinance, just so we're
Oh,
clear
it's
on
an
the language.
ordinance now.
It
Okay.
moved from a moratorium, the moratorium
it.
timeline ended.
Okay.
And then the zoning commission decided to prohibit cannabis
Okay,
sales and manufacturing in Southbury.
okay,
If a use like that came up, obviously ordinances can be revisited if they want to petition those types of things. I will say, I used to work right next to one in my old engineering company. You smell it everywhere around you. It's a production facility. It looks like any other production facility. There's nothing obvious or intrusive of, a cannabis brand or, people in sweatshirts walking around, blowing smoke all the time. Like, none of that. It's just a manufacturing building. But the audible smell
really?
was very, very in your face, depending on the day. Like, I feel like it was an air density thing, and we were in this bowl of the topography, and I'd walk out of my company's building, and all of a sudden it would hit me right in the face.
Wow.
And
I
this
had
is
no
something
idea.
that I informed the planning community at large when they were talking about this, because I felt I kind of had some intimate knowledge with it, because a lot of people were like, no, these aren't intrusive, you don't see them, you don't hear them, it's just another commercial or industrial use, what's going on inside is just what's going on inside. You do smell it.
Okay.
There is an effect. But not to say that that's not something we couldn't accommodate, but to answer your question.
Okay.
You go home and watch that, what the hell you smell like?
Right.
Well, there was a comment on I don't know if it was on LinkedIn or Facebook, but on one of our Economic Development Commission posts, where Kevin was saying goodbye, like his last letter to the town. And one of the comments was, thank you for talking to me when I had introduced like a cannabis something kind of business, and thank you for giving me the time. But that's why that kind of occurred to me now, not because I had a personal interest.
Don't
Now
blame her.
everyone's gonna
She
think
walks
that,
around
Robin.
with
Oh
a
my God.
sweatshirt.
Okay, Robin.
Okay, Robin, you're funny, Nancy. What was that, Ron?
She walks around with a sweatshirt with a picture.
The picture, yeah, exactly. Cool. So if everyone's comfortable with the prohibited
So how
uses.
about under prohibited use, what if, like a lab, like that's testing or
Any lab,
making, a bowl or something?
testing, anything, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how do we control that? Do we want that?
From a lab?
Yeah, or something along that lines.
Research manufacturing labs seem, depending on the intensity of their specific use, I think we'd have to take that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
But as far as a permitted use, especially in regard to maybe secondary to a large anchor facility, I think could be
Okay.
something that could work out on that site. Does anyone have any other questions on page number 4?
On number 5.
Page 5?
No, on number 5, on
Yep.
page 4. Is there a specific reason why you, educational facility?
Mm-hmm. You can't get tax income on them.
Taxes.
Huh?
They're tax-free,
They
so
don't
you don't
pay
get any
taxes.
revenue.
Okay.
Based on my research, any facility that provides education in any capacity, or it's a facility owned by an education facility for the purpose of providing education in any capacity, whether vocational or standard,
I
tax-free.
didn't know that, so.
Yep.
That's why Fairfield lost out on that.
Any other questions on page number 4?
The GE property in
All right.
Fairfield.
We can move right along to page number 5. There's a couple extra bulk requirements. If everyone's okay, I'm gonna remove the note that it's an increase from our current R60C standard zones, just as a note for the commissioners as they were reviewing this, but at this point, I feel like that could fall away. Maximum building height, 40 feet. This is something that is consistent, whether it's maximum building height or maximum stories, that I think is crucial when we are considering an industrial zone. There's two things I want to very much impart on this commission. One, you can't cap the height at 40 feet because most industrial style uses require very specific heights in their buildings to accommodate their standard design for technology and the internal infrastructure of their systems. With that being said, Southbury does not want a monolithic structure that exceeds what is the current height that's accommodated throughout the entire town. With that being said, there's a note on the maximum building height, and it's the same note that's followed with the maximum stories. And it states as follows: building height exceeding the maximum allowed may be proposed subject to the presentation of a series of prospective views that demonstrate that the buildings will not be highly visible from all locations along Main Street South and North, Routes 172, otherwise known as South Britain Road. I should add all of the other roads that I added, so I will make a note to make sure that they're all included, like Route 67, Southford Road, as well as Kettletown Road. So, continuing on, balloon visibility or similar tests shall be conducted in order to demonstrate that the building's visibility is not obvious or obtrusive. So in a sense, we're looking for what's existing and what's visually impacting the town currently as the IBM building and is not generating any type of negative feelings from the overall public. Any future building would need to represent that. If they want to go and exceed the building height, they need to exceed it in areas that are not visible from any locale in town or any of those roads, or the excess height is no more than what is currently accommodated by the IBM facility, whether that be through additional grading or topography or site changes. Those particular uses now have the flexibility to contour and change things to accommodate the need of the exceeding building height that they want and that they need, but also without imparting an additional impact on the town that is exceeding what IBM currently does. There's a new note to this section, and this is as a result of one of the notes that Commissioner Clark had provided me, and it states, if the increase to the maximum building height as determined by the Southbury Fire Marshal is found to pose operational challenges to emergency services and equipment, the applicant shall provide at their own expense the necessary equipment to facilitate adequate servicing of the parcel and associated buildings. So, speaking with the fire marshal, if anything is determined based on his review to be something that they cannot service with their current equipment, the applicant will have to provide the necessary equipment to the staff here in town to make sure that the building can be safely and adequately serviced from an emergency perspective. Maximum lot coverage by buildings and structures.
Before we move on,
Yeah, thank you.
you've got, your balloon visibility test.
Yep.
So that it's not obvious or obtrusive. How are we gonna define obvious or obtrusive? Is that going to be on our commission's thoughts?
It would
Is
be,
there-
but I'm happy to further, that's language from kind of the first iteration of this. So what I would propose is we remove obvious or obtrusive and specifically delineate that, specifically delineate that essentially what I previously said, that the IBM facility is the standard for visible impact on the town, and that any increase to that would either have to be shown to this commission, or that's pretty much it. Either meet what's IBM, or present to this commission in a manner that shows that this isn't gonna increase the visibility from any of those roads. I could just, I guess obvious and obtrusive could be open-ended.
Yeah.
I could further define it, but
I don't know if we want to define it, it was just a question.
I understand.
I have the same note though.
Yeah,
If you
yeah, if you guys
have,
are asking it.
you said that these companies that come in kind of have a set modular design that may exceed our 40-foot standard.
Yep.
And I don't want to box ourselves in too tightly so that we turn away, you know, the vast majority of potential,
Suitors.
yeah. But I also, you know, I'm not looking for a 80-foot structure that towers above, you know, the tree line up there.
Precisely.
So really, my only question is just, if we're gonna use that language, I was hoping it would fall back on our commission, that we would have to review it on a case-by-case, and
That was my intent with the language, but just based on this conversation, it feels to me that it needs to be specified in a manner that is clearer to those points, both the IBM standard and the commission's involvement and review, and
Anything above the
Anything
building.
that exceeds that standard.
Because they gotta get fire marshal approval anyway, so we might as well have us parlay with him.
Right, subject to planning
Yeah.
commission review.
Yep.
Yeah,
But also the visible,
yeah, of course, and the balloon test too, sure, at the same time,
fire marshal wouldn't do
Do
that.
our own
We'd-
balloon test.
right.
How would that be determined?
Sorry, Nancy?
Who determines obvious or obtrusive?
That was Commissioner Harrison's exact question.
Yeah,
So with that being said, it would be this commission, but the language should be expanded to
Yeah, let's take out
include
whatever.
the
obtrusive, we'll take it out.
standard note about IBM, and that being our foundational footprint for height, and if it exceeds the allowable or what's experienced on the IBM site, that this commission is the sole reviewer of whether or not that moves forward based on their presentations of the height.
So let's just change the language,
Mhm.
make it more, to Bob's point, that's a good idea. You okay with that?
yeah, I think,
Well, anything above it, they have to meet the fire marshal anyway, so we have to have
yeah,
an
but
involvement.
the fire marshal can't decide whether it's obvious or obtrusive. It can't be put on.
Fire
the
marshal
fire.
only decides whether or not his equipment can
Right.
accommodate it.
Yes.
Right, so
I
that all
understand.
kinds of goes together with us.
Planning commission decides whether
Yeah.
it's obvious or obtrusive, but I will probably be modifying the language in here to further expand on exactly that.
Okay,
Okay?
yes, get it.
So anything that exceeds the standard that exists today at the IBM building must come here.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yep.
makes sense.
Beautiful.
Anything in town
Here.
can't be over 40 feet, yeah. That's our regulation.
Yeah, I mean,
Our
I went,
regulation is 40 feet in town anyway, that's
Yeah.
why.
I went to IBM, and I'm pretty sure a lot of their sections are more than 40 feet, but it's a cut and fill aspect, and they got visual approval, and that's essentially what we're piggybacking on and putting into specific language.
Okay.
thank you.
Everyone okay with that we've stated it? Okay, I'll make the notes on that change. You'll all get additional copies when that's finalized.
One more thing?
Yeah,
You
Nancy.
talk about is found to pose operational challenges to emergency. Is there any way we can get the word safety in there? It's not only operational, it's for safety purposes,
Okay.
you know?
The
And a
applicant
lot of people pay attention to that word.
is found to pose operational challenges or safety
Operational or
concerns.
safety challenges, operational or.
Operational challenges or safety concerns to emergency services and
Yeah.
equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds
Everyone
nice.
okay with that?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I'll add that as well. All right, everyone okay with the rest of the bulk requirements on page 5? Before we move on to design and performance
The
standards.
10, 20, and 30, yeah, that's what you're talking about? Call that?
Everyone good?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Moving into design and performance standards, the environmental protection standard. You've all read these, so I don't need to go through them There's a lot of mitigation measures and requirements on there for low-impact development and requiring green techniques and energy-efficient standards, and you're really just coaxing these applicants into doing those things. Buffering and screening is something that's talked about pretty extensively, with a recent addition based on Commissioner Clark's comments. And this additional comment is related to the fact that often the height of these landscape plantings is often inadequate. And they expect these things to grow into something that is adequate, but in 20 years, we're just not getting there. So Commissioner Clark suggested that we include the adequate height language within the buffering so that this commission can determine what is adequate as a installation height for the landscaping.
Should we say something about, our experience has been, yes, so they plant these 2-foot tall things, they're gonna grow, and that didn't work, so you addressed that. But what about the maintenance of the buffer? Is there anywhere in here, because also been our experience, if they die and you're,
So your site plan
maintained.
approval should cover that. There is a obvious challenge with going through every approved commercial site and addressing each of their plants that was approved dating back to, the 1970s. So
Once before though, we put a time limit on it, shall be maintained at,
Right.
at the required height and distance for 5 years.
And then what?
So that they come back and they'll have to replant, or they'll have to,
I'm confused as to what
The
the 5-year
maintenance, the
timeline, I know, I get it. What does the 5-year timeline do? So you tell the applicant that they can be approved for a planting plan, but then they have to come back to you in 5 years for what?
know that if there is a problem, we
Mhm.
have some strength here
Within 5
to
years?
address it.
My question would be, what happens after that 5 years?
Yeah,
Nancy's thinking more along the lines of initially when the plantings are in, say half die or something, they
Yeah.
leave it that way, right?
And they leave it
looks
that
like
way.
crap.
Totally understand.
Right, so that's what we're talking about here, that we police it for at least 5 years, gives enough time to get them to maturity, right, at least.
Okay, a policing of the existing trees to assess their health and
something along
growth
that lines.
along that 5-year timeline.
Buffer, yeah.
They'll
Yeah.
still be required to remediate any dead trees in perpetuity, so long as they're operating on that site beyond the 5-year timeline. But that is the 5-year timeline with which we are accessing the site, reviewing or receiving reports from the applicant regarding this landscaping.
We should put language in there, one of my notes is for
Yeah.
immediate impact, not to wait for it to grow. No, the
Yeah,
buffer,
that's-
the buffer should be immediate. If it's a 10-foot tree, so be it.
Mhm.
That's how we want it. Not, we should kind of spell that out. Because, we wait 10 years, they don't grow. We see that happen all the time.
You take a site that large and you start talking
I understand.
plantings of that size,
Yeah,
Yeah.
could we negotiate and say that they're, planted at 50%?
Yeah, we come up with something, sure.
What-
Otherwise, they'll
Right,
throw
I
in,
mean, if you-
they'll throw in tiny ones, right?
If you need a 20-foot buffer, and you're forcing them to plant a 20-foot buffer,
20-foot wide. Yeah.
20 feet wide,
that gets pretty expensive pretty quick.
Correct, yeah, I believe there's.
but most of it's already there.
A good amount of it should be there already, unless they
Yeah.
disturb it.
yeah,
That's all.
but
Yeah, there is language in here that states unless otherwise already provided
Right.
by the
Yeah.
natural environment.
Yeah, it's already
So
there.
it's not like they're going to have to circle the property with this. In my opinion, it would probably be at a couple crucial choke points with respect
Okay.
to the visual impact that can be imparted on the town.
Then let's put some language in negotiation of appearance or something, like Bob was saying, like it could be 50% or something like that, whatever.
Okay.
I don't know, however you
And
wanna,
it says additional mitigation, so it's additional to.
what language would you like?
When
You have an
necess-
idea in your mind,
when
something like that sounds
necessary.
right.
No, I mean, Jordan has expressed that he thinks it would be a minimal addition, because the vast majority of the trees are already there.
Depends on what the buffer is. Are we
So-
talking a buffer when you're on site and you're looking at a refuse container? Or are we talking, you're on I-84 heading east and you're traveling up and you can just see the building location there? I'm just trying, and therein lies two things. I think there's two buffers we need to consider. One is the impact on the town and one is the impact on the site.
The site.
So with respect to the site, it's my opinion that any site generates a small tree. These things grow up over time, and over time it's accommodated. If we need certain areas that need to be buffered tomorrow, that's when we go deciduous and evergreens and certain vegetation like that, that the buffer is gonna roughly be there and it should grow in within 4 or 5 years. I like the idea of looking at the next 5 years in reporting from a landscape perspective. Just to know the health of these things, to get updates on these things, and in 5 years, when we have solid growth across the board, we'll know if something goes wrong, because there's an obvious break in the overall system. With that being said, I'm happy to hear any comments. I like the idea of the 5-year reporting.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And who is that gonna fall onto?
That would be on the applicant,
Okay.
and the applicant can consult with a licensed arborist
Okay.
to provide those reports, to provide the
Yeah.
health of the trees that are in crucial areas, and
We've done that on a couple of other sites years ago, yeah.
Sure.
The
Who would
5-year
police
thing. Yeah.
the owner, though? That's the thing. What if we have to,
Yeah, what if they're not on site?
right, what if the owner doesn't come on site to police that, right? We have to have some type of clause in there about that.
talking to the 5-year one, or is this different?
Yeah, right, so
5-year works?
They
Yeah.
have to figure that out.
they have to figure it out, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine, that's cool.
So right now, the only change to that section is the 5-year reporting. I know we talked about a lot, so anything else that
No, I'm happy.
Me too.
that supports what we were looking for?
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Traffic access, this, an addition, again, based on a comment from Commissioner Clark. If determined necessary, the town of Southbury may contract an independent traffic engineer to conduct an additional traffic analysis. Such analysis shall be paid for at the applicant's expense. Traffic analysis is gonna be something that's required, but if this commission just doesn't feel comfortable with the specific traffic analysis, they can go and get a third party to conduct one for them at the applicant's expense, just to make sure everything's above board. Traffic's gonna be a huge aspect of this, in my
Pretty standard
opinion.
for us, we've done that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, everyone's okay with that?
Sure.
Yes.
Everyone okay with everything else on page 6?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Page 7 doesn't look like there were many additions, other than the changing of a word
Yep.
to including. Does anyone have any questions regarding lighting, signage, energy use, architecture, outside storage on page 7?
No.
No.
Everyone okay?
Pretty
Wonderful.
straightforward.
Page 8, we touch on noise, vibration, and maintenance. Does anyone have any comments, concerns, or questions regarding these items within performance standards?
Just
Did we talk about
curiosity, where did you get your decibel ratings from?
I believe those were standard off of, I don't recall the website I used, but I was looking up what standard decibel ratings for such a use would be. And these ended up in just like the normal range for daytime uses and nighttime uses. I'm happy to cite that for you and provide that information, just for
Just
clarity's
curious.
sake.
It's a
But-
good question, though, because, you know, they'll probably, whoever does will ask the same question, you know, to make sure that they're on target with it.
So I will be happy to provide the citing for how the decibel was decided on, and then obviously this commission can, you know, agree or disagree and modify therein.
I said a note about the blasting. So many sites, when there is blasting for whatever reason, affects the wells in the area or affects the aquifer, you know, and so we have required in the past a pre-blast and post-blast survey for vibration.
Do you recall what properties this was for? The only blasting that
Yeah.
I was involved with was the allowed blasting on Southford Road.
Yes.
What this commission approved was the soil extraction. What the fire marshal is required to monitor is the actual blasting itself. So that monitoring comes from the fire marshal's office. What I would caution against is overstepping your regulatory authority and stepping on theirs. So if you want specific language in here, what I would suggest is we consult with the fire marshal and make sure we're in concert with him and not overstepping in any capacity. Because if he already requires pre and post blast surveys,
He's not, that's why we did it.
well, I can't tell
That
you,
particular
yeah,
site, yeah,
we
yeah.
have a different fire marshal too, so I can't say what he would or wouldn't do, but that would be my advice on
let's
that
check with
note.
him.
Bring
That's a
that
good
up with
question.
him?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because people's wells have been affected by blasting.
We should put it in there at least, for
Yeah.
the candidate, whoever is to check with the fire marshal regarding that, to cover the town anyway, at least, put it on their table.
Including,
Yep, we're better off that way. That way no one can say we didn't have it in there.
Wonderful. Okay. I will follow up with the fire marshal regarding the blasting. Is there anything else this commission feels should be addressed on page 8 regarding noise, vibration, and maintenance? Maintenance is continued pretty heavily on the other page.
I'm good.
We're good. Everyone else okay? Wonderful.
yes.
All right, we're moving on to page 9. We have more of the maintenance section, as well as drainage, sewage, off-site improvements. Any comments related to this? I thought off-site improvements was definitely something we wanted to specifically
Look at.
call out.
Yep,
It's a huge aspect of why the IBM site is designed the way it is, and if there's anything that needs to go on in the future, we should definitely be in the driver's seat regarding those changes. The commission should. And any comments on page 9, though?
I like your inclusion of not limited to.
Always, always. Are you kidding?
So-
It's my favorite word.
sewage, there's already an on-site system up there, right?
If they choose to keep it, we don't know. We don't know what's gonna happen with that. They could choose to retrofit it and use the existing. There could be a use that's relatively, low impact on the septic side of things, and the cost effectiveness of rehabbing that entire system doesn't make sense to them. We don't really know.
Okay.
But the expansion of a sewer line into that property is a no-go in any capacity.
Right.
Yeah. And that's clearly stated. Is everyone okay with page 9?
Yes.
And the items listed there, and wonderful. So we can move on to page 10. I'll start with the demonstration of potential future use of site, since that carries over from the previous page. That was just something I considered as a part of what we're experiencing today. It's not a perfect fix, but if the applicant can present that their particular use or their site or their building or how they're designing the site, and it can be accommodated for future use, that's something that they're actually presenting to you. And if there are changes that you could make in anticipation of potential future uses, you have that control at that time. But by no means do I feel like that's just gonna fix all the problems that come from tenants exiting parcels like this, like we're experiencing today with IBM. Commission authority, I feel like that's something that should be clearly stated within
Yep.
the regulations.
Thank you.
Everyone okay with that?
Sure.
All right. We already touched a lot on lot and bulk requirements regarding the industrial park side of things. Does anyone have any questions related to that? We
Just-
have another note on the maximum building height. I apologize, and I will make the same comments on that aspect.
Yeah, just, I noticed that on, where are we on, page 10, under lot and bulk requirements, you've got a minimum lot area of 15 acres.
Mm-hmm.
On page 4,
10,
we have lot and bulk requirements, and it's 10.
single tenant.
Okay.
Single tenant, and 10 was what was used. I'm happy to expand that to 227, but just the number seemed odd to me. I figured let's just keep it consistent with the old zone. But if we have to bump that up to 100, it's not gonna change anything.
Got
This is our zone,
Yeah,
so.
I got it.
I know it's a little odd, but I'm happy to clarify that in the text, because I don't want anything to look
Yeah, we
confusing.
might as well put it right next to it, right?
Put
On
what?
Number 4, right? It's different than, like Bob was talking, this one says industrial park.
Single tenant versus,
Right.
It's single tenant versus, so what I would suggest, or what I could do on page 4 is just change that number from 10 to 100 or 200, because that site isn't getting any smaller. And that's the site that this is going.
That's fine either way, sure.
But either way, it's still the site.
Yeah.
Not worried about it.
Ultimately a moot point, but
Okay.
I don't want it to be confusing, so if that needs to change, I can just add a 0 to that, and then at least there's a drop down in the number that makes sense. But I understand, and
It's not that important.
understood. Does anyone else have any other questions regarding page 10, lot?
Where was the setback from the wetlands or waterway?
Standard setback for wetlands as a regulated area is 50 feet,
Okay,
so a
what is-
wetland or water body.
What is 100? Is that the upland or something?
So a 100-foot setback regarding wetlands is anytime there's a named watercourse.
Okay.
So Bullet Hill Brook, Transylvania Brook, we have Pomperaug River, any of those named watercourses, if you hit one, it's 100 feet back from the watercourse.
And is that doesn't apply here?
No,
Okay,
no named watercourses
thank you.
anywhere near here. Any other questions regarding page 10?
No.
Bulk requirements end with the maximum lot coverage and continue on to page 11 if everyone's ready.
Yeah, ready.
Wonderful. Couple extra ones, but no questions regarding those either. The 30 and 40.
Nope.
Okay. Multi-building industrial campuses developed in this section shall meet the following standards in addition to the standards outlined. So 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Those were all included, but recently expanded on regarding the language. With that being said, would this commission like 4 minutes to read those through?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna take a minute and stretch my legs.
What's IND?
Industrial.
Oh.
How's everybody doing? Good? All right, you're up.
Everyone's good? Okay. Does anyone have any questions on unified site plan? We can just go through each one individually.
Sounds good.
That one looks good.
Yeah, I really think it's important to call out, if we're going industrial park, the synergy of these developments and the intent behind them. You get the best benefit on the tax perspective, you get the best sustainability or lack of environmental impact, and you, I think, could benefit the site in a way that you're still getting the best use out of it, but you're minimizing the overall impact.
Yep.
But that's the case with the unified site plan. Does anyone have any questions regarding access and circulation?
I do. What's a heavy truck? Is that a real term under AASHTO?
That brings up a good question.
I was wondering the same, is it tractor trailer, is that, I mean,
How is that?
fire apparatus, what is it?
How
Because
is
it's,
that
they're all
defined?
big and heavy.
How is that defined?
I know you
We
got fire apparatus there,
could-
but.
As an aspect of this section of regulations, just devise our own definition section and then hit on each of the items that we feel aren't clearly stipulated, that we want very clearly stipulated, and that could be one of the items that we want to make sure is clearly put out there from a definition standpoint.
Okay.
So why don't we look to add definitions to the front of the page, because I feel that should be included anyway.
Okay.
And then we will include heavy trucks.
Yep.
And what I would ask this commission to do, as they are perusing these regulations almost as much as I am, which I'm sure you all are, anything you see as a word that comes up as confusing or you feel needs additional enforcement or definition, put it in an email and send it my way. You can cite the page, and I'll make sure that it's included in the definition page, which we'll all be able to review and approve. But we'll definitely include heavy trucks as a start. I will go through this as well and call out anything that I feel is not already clearly addressed within our standard definition page at the front of our zoning regulations and needs to be further defined in the industrial side of
And
things.
we should probably spell out the standard, the AASS HTOs, say
Thank
what
you.
it is.
Yeah, got it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good definition. Under access and circulation, can we put in, I'm not sure if I have the right, ADA compliant
I believe that's
sidewalks and stuff?
required anyway.
But we're calling it out, safe pedestrian walkways. park
Sure.
areas, building entrances, maybe we could just
Add the word ADA.
ADA.
Perfect.
I said ADA.
I believe they have to accommodate those anyway, but the addition of that in that section, I think, works perfectly, so why not include it?
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding access and circulation? I think we got some good ideas here. Everyone okay? All right, wonderful. On to shared facilities. Does anyone have any questions with what they read inside shared facilities?
Sorry to be such a pain.
Nancy, you're not a pain at all, are you kidding? Whatever you need.
When we talked about shared facilities, must be accompanied with blah, 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 blah. It goes down further. Agreement shall address rights and usage responsibilities, long-term maintenance and repair, cost sharing. You have to make sure that that's not cost sharing with the town. It's cost sharing among tenants, right? Okay.
I personally felt that that was clear in the regulation. If you feel in any degree that that's not, we should specify it.
And cost sharing mechanisms.
Because as it's reading, it's regarding agreements shall be addressed
Yeah.
regarding, and right before property owners and tenants, but I'm more than happy to specify that again in this section, just so cost-sharing mechanisms can't be misconstrued to mean anything other than what we're trying to impart with this section.
If you feel
I
it's
just put
necessary.
behind agreements, in that sentence, you put
Okay.
agreements
Cost
between
sharing
occupants.
mechanisms between tenants.
Yeah, I could put it right behind cost-sharing mechanisms as well.
Good idea.
Front of the back, as long as you're defining who you're referring to in that sentence from a grammatical standpoint, it covers all the bases there, so I see no reason why not to include it. between property owners or tenants.
Yeah, I see that.
Perfect. Does anyone else have any other questions or concerns regarding shared facilities?
You know what, while we're on shared facilities, I'm just thinking back to where my earlier thought, I just had it in my note from my first page over there, but you and I talked about this, as employee cafeteria on page 3, accessory use, where we had, such as employee cafeterias, daycare, parking facilities. What if somebody, you know, we talked about that, you know, not just cafeterias, but what if they want to put a Starbucks, you know, inside a building, right, or something like that?
For their own personal use, go for it.
Yeah, right, so do we have to kind of specify it?
Specify
use?
that it cannot be for outside use and the public is not
Right, or
invited
do
to
you think that would make
these.
sense?
I have no issue including that.
Yeah.
That just specifies the language. If we're gonna specify
Just
the
imagine
percentage.
public, hey, we're going, up there, they got.
Oh, I know, yeah,
Starbucks,
they
right?
put Starbucks in Targets, why couldn't I go into
Right,
whatever
right.
this building is and get a Starbucks too? Okay.
It's just something like that, and that, I was just, when I saw shared use, I figured that was, we might as well.
There's
Mention
a
that.
church on Route 7 that has a Starbucks, a basketball court, a movie theater. Oh, I got all that in
That's
the
Faith Church.
Hmm?
I used to go there.
I've been a few
That was my
times
church
there.
growing up, yeah.
Everything.
The coffee shop wasn't a Starbucks, it was back when, remember Wachovia, the bank?
Yeah.
They called it Watchovia. Cute, but whatever. Neither here nor there. Any other questions regarding, Rich, I just, not jump over that too quickly, I have 4 occupants only as a note, and I'll specify the language in a way that very well describes that in the, number 7 accessory
That's the thing,
uses.
we can always specify an example, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
That's fine, that
More
works.
employees.
Yeah, employees, occupants, yeah,
Yep.
that's definitely the route I'm gonna go. I've not devised the specific language just yet, but that's the note I have and the intent that I'll go
Okay.
with that. Any other questions regarding shared facilities?
Number 20, no.
Everyone's okay? We can move on to architectural design. Does anyone have any questions with the new language for architectural design? Everyone's okay? And then we end it with commission authority one more time, because it cannot be stated enough.
You know, one thing quickly, jumping back to shared facilities, where it says over here, the agreement shall be subject to review, the approval by the planning commission and the town council.
Is that the 11 or?
Number
12?
20, I'm sorry, under shared facilities.
Is it
that's what
on the back page?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bottom of-
What will that entail for us if
First
there's a lot of that? I mean, this planning commission itself would have to look at those agreements? I mean, are we qualified for that?
You approve it,
Oh, okay.
but that's where town council steps in as your,
Okay.
a resource for those type of things. That you should never be put on the block for these things. You guys make sure that all the boxes are checked. And then you are able to utilize the necessary professionals to get to those determinations. And that, in my opinion, is another avenue to utilize town council to make sure that all the agreements are just that. They're
Perfect.
rock solid.
Okay.
Do you want me to add the expense line to that as well?
Ha, perfect.
We probably should. Yeah, I would think so.
Everyone would like that?
Sure.
Yeah,
All right.
that's good.
Yeah, the town shouldn't have to cut that cost.
Okay. That takes us through it. Not really sure what the discussion at this point would be, other than next steps. Does anyone have anything they'd like to, I mean, Rich, it's your meeting, I don't mean to.
That's okay, you're doing fine. So, I think next steps, and everyone has to, you know, agree with me on this, it's not just me, is we have to get a final copy from you, kind of what we just went over tonight, back to us to kind of take a last peruse to make sure we're all good with it. And then we need to get this over to, Gary's team,
Zoning.
the zoning, to get on their meeting for this month,
June 11th, I
June
believe.
11th.
June 11th.
No, June, June 11th, right? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, son.
Yeah, we have to, so that they can, take a look at it and, have a public hearing for July. I think that's the timeline we should be on.
That's the timeline, yep, and I'll speak to the timeline
I
briefly.
think, if that makes sense to everybody.
So, we have a hiatus in August, and so does, the zoning commission. So therein lies kind of the
I was gonna touch base on that. yeah.
choke point of
Yep.
the timeline that
Yep.
we're under here.
So Bob, you had a question first?
Well, I was saying, it seemed like we agreed in bulk to the vast majority of this. There are obviously some tweaks. you know, is it possible to put forward a positive, or it's not a refer, but to refer it to zoning with the amendments noted? The amendments noted, you'll obviously email them to us, we can review them, and if there's an issue, we can certainly, you know, speak to you directly via the email, but can we keep this, to keep the timeline moving?
The way I see it, this commission has already approved the language changes, right? We're all here and we're all talking about it, and this commission just specifically approved the language changes.
In our last meeting, we talked about the timeline, and we kind of gave it a semi-approval to move it in that direction.
Correct.
Already.
Tentative approval.
Yeah,
If,
but I agree with Bob, we should probably put something on the book saying, you know, we recommend this goes over to planning by the next
Yeah.
meeting, I mean,
Zoning.
zoning, by the
Yeah.
11th, for them to take a look at it, and,
so we'll probably end the meeting there.
yep,
On that note, but what I will say is I will make the changes here. Everyone will receive them individually. If anyone has any comments they would like to make, a new draft will then be formed. Okay, so what you've approved today is the changes. If anything doesn't sit right with you regarding what's sent to you on Monday when I make these changes, you will provide those changes to me, and they will end up in a new draft. This will all turn black as far as the text, and anything changed will go right back to red. So we'll codify what we've done here today, and any new changes moving forward will very clearly call out. That text, what we've approved here today, that will move forward. Okay, that will move forward to zoning. I'll work with Richard to make sure that the specific writing of a request for a petition is submitted, him as the chairman and having the authority to do that with this commission's approval. We'll make sure that the paperwork's all settled up, but this will be the document that goes to zoning. Any changes you make will just be a amended document that they can opine over during their meeting and during their discussion on
Perfect.
the application. And any changes you want to make at that point, in that entire June acceptance meeting to the July acceptance meeting, it's still your application, it's still your regulation. You get to make whatever text changes you want, and then the commission on zoning gets to adjudicate over it. So this is our rock-solid document as we've discussed it today. Any changes we can still make, they will be clearly delineated, but this is what I will be working with the chairman to make sure goes for the zoning commission.
everybody good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
I would appreciate it. Each draft is dated because I get them mixed up.
It's,
Good job, Nancy, because I was thinking the same thing.
I
It's
know,
true.
Nance, if I had dates on these things, you'd see them every day, unfortunately. But you're 100% right, this
Put one on
is,
the final one.
yes, no, 100%, thank you, you're right. I just put page numbers on it today because, duh, like, duh.
All right.
But neither here nor there. I'm happy to define these moving forward. I think we'll have a good document to move with. And the zoning commission can give us their feedback as well. And we'll hear from the public. We'll hear from, maybe some potential developers will be interested in getting involved in the conversation when the public hearing kicks off. We're happy to hear from anyone who has something to say about this. And the public, as they obviously will know, is more than able to review any of these regulations at any time, as they are more than, FOIable and available in the town hall office in the land use department on the 3rd floor.
But this is not, it'll be our final draft that's available.
All of these are available to the public. It's all freedom of information. All our drafts are available.
'cause the
If
whole
anyone
meeting's
wants to
been
see
noticed, so-
anything, they
Yep.
have absolutely the opportunity to review any
Yep.
of this as we've gone through it.
So can we name ours, yours, final draft?
It's yours.
Final draft? Because it still says draft, but it's,
Understood.
We know
So
that. We're not gonna meet
the
again.
text that we've approved here today will be titled final draft.
And
I don't love that either.
No.
Why don't
I
you
saw
put a date, why don't you put a date
I was
on
just gonna
it?
say, why don't we date it?
We'll just draft it with a date, and that's it.
Draft it with a
Perfect.
date, because
Just
The
say
final draft
date.
will be the last
Yeah,
one.
yep,
okay.
Thank you. I agree. I
So
agree.
this is the June 5th draft, right?
This is the June 5th draft.
there we go.
I did title the file, though.
So we all know
Just not
June
the
5th
paper.
is the one that we're working off of as pretty much the final one.
And it is titled in your file. I just
All right.
apologize. It's in your email. It is titled June 5th.
So
it does have
we don't
a
need a
date on it.
motion or approval to, with the plan, we can just send it over. We don't need to, I can just do it by chairman, right? Or do it
I
on
believe so.
record?
Why don't you guys do a simple vote on whether or not you feel that it's ready to go and giving you the authority to
Yeah.
go before zoning.
Why don't we make the motion, just to
Yeah,
keep it
let's-
clear?
Jordan,
Please.
Giving the-
I just want to point out that because it's a discussion, we don't need to vote. That's just
Oh, oh,
the way
What did you
it.
say?
The
It's
commission
up to-
does want to move forward with a formal petition to amend the zoning regulations.
Okay.
You're right, the discussion doesn't need to move forward, but at this point, I feel it is a necessary enough decision that everyone should clearly display their approval or
Approval,
denial
yeah.
of that.
Okay.
So just for the record,
Okay,
I
no
think
problem.
that's a perfectly
so,
fine
too.
way of addressing this.
We could put in the motion that
answer
we
that.
authorize the changes agreed to tonight. That we authorize you to incorporate those.
And for your chairman to submit a formal petition to the zoning commission.
Yeah, both.
Okay, you want to make the motion?
I think we did.
Thank you. I'll
just-
second it.
There you go.
With regard, and I'll add to make sure that I will
Authorize.
work with George to submit the
We-
final
so
to,
authorize him to edit as discussed
beautiful.
this evening, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
6:05, yeah.
Seconded by, and we did get an all in favor? I
Are all in
apologize.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Positive. Excellent, thank you.
What a
Good work.
job.
All right,
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
all right, so I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
All in
second
favor?
that.
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Happy weekend.
All right.
It's only one grammatical thing. That's what I do for, sometimes for a living, I edit books.
Oh, no,
So-
that's good.
There's just one on the last page there. You can have this if you want.
I'll keep that, Nancy.
Okay.
You like hard copies?
I do, but for a limited period of time.